Now that we know that the Steelers have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields in their quarterback room, what's the biggest factor in how they could reset what the Steelers need to reset in this offense? We're going to talk about that on this Locked On Steelers podcast episode. I'm your host, Chris Carter. That Mock Draft Monday and a lot more. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today right to your phone. And when you do, you can create an account, use code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your first purchase of tickets. More on Game Time later. All right. Locked On Steelers fans, I do have to apologize. I recorded a whole episode for you guys last night, and there were some technical difficulties. So I needed to get some sleep because your boy has been working around the clock over the past week, and I had to cover Selection Sunday last night. So this episode got recorded Monday morning. So I apologize to those who missed out on their morning commutes. But we do have this episode here. So we've talked about the trading away of Kenny Pickett. We've talked about the trading for Justin Fields, what it does, Russell Wilson. I want to take a step back now off of the rawness of that. And let's take a look at how these additions, I think, go towards what the Steelers are actually trying to do with their offense beyond the structure of the play, beyond that. I think a big part of this also comes down to they are trying to reset culture and leadership on the offensive side of the ball, because let's face it, their attempts at doing either have not led to much. They've gotten guys who I think have set good examples at times. I think Najee Harris has kind of done that at times. I think Pat Freiermuth has done that at times. Isaac Seumalo's come in and done that at times. But there hasn't been that catalyst leader. They were hoping Kenny Pickett could do that. They put his locker next to Cam Hayward so he could learn from Cam and the great leader that Cam Hayward is. They called him Big Ken last year. They made him a team captain last year. They tried to do everything they could to kind of put him in the forefront. And it didn't work out. He didn't deliver on the field enough. There were obvious, issues that were going on at the end of the season when Mason Rudolph started playing. When he was asked if he learned anything, he said no. And then obviously there were some tensions going on when they added Russell Wilson that Kenny Pickett didn't appreciate. And now he's with the Philadelphia Eagles. And so I think a big part of what the Steelers need is a complete reset on that, especially at quarterback, to try to reset what it means and find the standard that it's supposed to be, what quarterbacks are supposed to do beyond just, again, on the field, but leadership, be the leading voice, lead the team meetings, set the tone for everyone else. That's what the Steelers need at quarterback. And I think that's where things kind of got lost in the shuffle in the transition from Ben Roethlisberger to what the last 2 years were. Remember, the only quarterback that carried over from the Ben Roethlisberger years into the last 2 seasons the Steelers have had Kenny Pickett was Mason Rudolph. And we all know Mason Rudolph didn't get along with Ben Roethlisberger. They didn't like each other. That was very public. Mason Rudolph was even talking about that and how this quarterback room with Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky was much more friendly to him than any other that he's had in the NFL. Obviously referencing Ben Roethlisberger there. So any leadership components that Ben Roethlisberger had to pass on to the next generation of Steelers quarterback, it didn't happen. And so now you're in a position where you have to kind of hope that these guys figure it out themselves. And obviously that didn't happen. So what are you going to do now? Because Kenny Pickett's flustered, you traded him away and you needed to get someone in. So that's where I think Russell Wilson can actually be a bigger asset than what we are initially thinking here, than just what's his play action numbers, what's his red zone numbers, what's his ability to throw the ball over the middle part of the field. And I even brought up hey, if there are questions about any divisions that he creates in the locker room, if there are questions about those types of things that we heard in rumblings with the Broncos and rumblings with the Seahawks, let's flesh them out. But that's why we brought on Alan Saunders last week. We asked him, hey, what did you hear with this when you wrote the report that you said you talked to people at the combine from the Seahawks and the Broncos? And they said, that's nonsense. I talked to Locked On Broncos host Cody Rourke on the North Shore Drive podcast for the Post-Gazette last Wednesday. And he was like, Russell Wilson was beloved by his offensive teammates in Denver. He wasn't a divisive force. And so if we're to believe those reports and of those people who are getting the information from the Broncos and Seahawks themselves, then Russell Wilson shouldn't be that divisive force in Pittsburgh. And if he can be a uniting force, if he can be a leading force, he can set the tone for what the Steelers do need from the quarterback position. What is expected, not just on the field, but also in the leadership, in the meeting rooms. What kind of tone of voice that you set, what expectations you set for your teammates, how you lead your teammates through successes and through failures. I think those are the things that the Steelers are missing, have been missing the most, is having guys that can pick them up through those moments. And if Russell Wilson, a guy who's been to 9 Pro Bowls, has won a Super Bowl, has been in the NFL for 13 years, however long he's been in the NFL, if he can bring that to the Steelers, even for just a year, that could be what resets the locker room, what resets the quarterback position. And the good part about this too is getting Justin Fields, is that Justin Fields can be your first experiment if you move on from Russell Wilson after a year, because let's face it, he's on a 1-year deal for a vet minimum. If he has a good year with the Steelers, I imagine he'll want more money. And I'm not so sure the Steelers will pay it unless it's like a reasonable amount of money. And if they don't pay it, they might say like, hey, we got Justin Fields back there and we're waiting to see what he does. And if Justin Fields steps into the role and he sees a good tone that's been struck by Russell Wilson, that can be the thing that fixes that problem that we're talking about in the quarterback room. And if you fix the problem with the quarterbacks, a lot of the rest of the offense can come together. And again, that's just the leadership component. We keep talking about like the quarterback in what the Steelers offense and with Arthur Smith and what they're going to ask of the quarterback. It's not going to be to throw the ball 40 times a game. Maybe 30 times a game if you're feeling gun happy. But when you're looking at what the Steelers are going to be realistically asking of their quarterbacks, I think the biggest thing is going to be make the smart throws, be the leader by doing those things and not trying to play hero all the time and playing to the structure. Be coachable, be coached to do the right things. That's where I think the Steelers could get something out, could get a really important reset to what they need at quarterback, so that expectations are set by a veteran who's done it before in Russell Wilson, and maybe carried on by a guy who's a young veteran in Justin Fields. And if he becomes your guy, great. If not, then you try to find that other guy very soon. But your hope is that Russell Wilson can be part of resetting that part of your culture and resetting your expectations for that very vital position to make everything work. Because let's face it, the Steelers haven't had even decent quarterback play since the first half of the 2020 season, when Ben Roethlisberger came back from his injury and it looked like everything was fine. And then eventually we found out it wasn't, because his age was starting to show midway through that season. And if you really think about it, that's now 5 seasons where you had maybe 8 games of good quarterback play. That's a tough spot. And again, it's remarkable that the Steelers have not had a losing season during that stretch, even with all the other problems they faced, even with all the other players that have either retired, been injured, knocked out of the team, lost to free agency, whatever. It's remarkable that they've done what they did. And if Russell Wilson and Justin Fields can be part of that reset to fix what's going on at quarterback, and if they want to, in the next year or two they find another young quarterback that they think is the future, and maybe it's not Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. Well, Russell Wilson isn't the future; he's too old for that. But if just Justin Fields is maybe another placeholder quarterback, maybe you can have that veteran presence carry over, so that rookie quarterback comes that you maybe draft in maybe like 2026. I'd say, because the 2025 class don't look too great, but maybe in the 2026 class, if Justin Fields is still your guy and you're like, he's decent, but he's not the franchise guy, and you think that you can get the franchise guy that year, that franchise guy comes into a situation where there's an established precedent of what's going on. There's something to pass down to him from an experienced quarterback. That's what I think the Steelers might need, and what might be the hidden benefit to the quarterback situation that they've now created with Omar Khan and the aggressive front office moves that they've made in just 1 week of free agency. That's the other part of this. We're just hitting week 2. Who knows what the Steelers are going to do next? We'll talk about what they can do next, and that's at wide receiver. A few options there, including a visit that's scheduled for this week that might bring a new player to the Steelers offense. All that here and more on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Stick with us. We'll be right back right after this. But first, I want to remind you that this show is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you could still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal information. Claim is of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our discussions here. We're going to switch from the quarterback position because we talked a lot of quarterback for the past 5 days in a row. Who knows? Maybe they'll trade for someone else. Justin Herbert. Omar. I'm running out of things to not expect Omar Khan to do at this point. But in all seriousness, we do know that, thanks to the reporting, I think it was Jerry Dulac who first reported this. It might be Missouri. We know that Mike Williams, the former Chargers receiver, is scheduled to have a visit with the Steelers sometime this week. And that brings into the question, what are the Steelers planning to do at wide receiver? Is Mike Williams the plan, or are there other options? And is Mike Williams the best fit? Let's look at Mike Williams first and foremost. So Mike Williams coming in to what the Steelers need right now. They need a number 2 wide receiver behind George Pickens. Mike Williams is a guy who, if you look at his career so far, he's had some up and downs. Now, remember, he was a high first round draft pick, 7th overall by the Chargers way back in 2017. I mean, 7th overall in the year that TJ Watt was picked. So that's how far back we're going. But he's a big body guy who's supposed to run. He's supposed to be able to run fast, make big plays. And he just hasn't taken off in his career. Part of it's also because he's been injured a lot. In fact, this last season, he played only 3 games. I think he's never started all 16 or 17 games in a regular season as of yet. And the most yards that he had in a season was 1,146. He's only gotten over 1,000 yards twice in his what's now a 7-year career. This will be his 8th year in the NFL. And he's set to be 30 years old by mid-season. So you could bring in Mike Williams, but I think the question then becomes, does Mike Williams fit what you're trying to do with the other receiver spot next to George Pickens? Because if you want another long-bodied guy that can go up and get the football and make plays, sure, you could double up on that. But I think one thing that made Deontay Johnson really good at times for the Steelers was the contrast between him and George Pickens, because it gave defenses different things to have to consider and prepare for. For example, George Pickens, we talked about this going into last season. George Pickens, according to all of the advanced metrics, was one of, if not the best contested ball catchers coming out of his rookie season. Deontay Johnson, coming out of that same season, was one of the best separators, if not the best separator in route runners of wide receivers. Having those two guys opposite of each other force defenses to have to honor different things. And I think that's an advantage the Steelers should try to still have in this offense. So with that being said, if Mike Williams isn't that guy, does that mean that they should give up on him? I don't think they should give up on him, but I do think that they should explore other options. Now, one other popular option that's going on right now that everyone's talking about is Brandon Aiyuk. Why Brandon Aiyuk? Well, of course, if you know Brandon Aiyuk, he's a 49er. He's on his 5th year extension after being a first round pick. I think he was 26th overall. But he's due about $14.1 million because of that 5th year extension that the Niners gave him. But the Niners are a team that maybe they could use some salary cap space. Maybe they don't want to pay him that right now, or maybe they want to find some value for it. If the Steelers Steelers and Omar Khan could find a way to get a Brandon Aiyuk, who is a really good route runner. I don't think he's as good as Deontay Johnson, but he's very, very, very good. And very sharp at his route running. And who knows, maybe he'll end up being better than Deontay Johnson. He's also, younger. So, he's had less time to develop than Deontay did. But if he could be that guy, and you can get him for a middle round pick, maybe a fourth rounder, like we were talking about, with Justin Fields, who knows what Omar Khan could pull off, because right now he just keeps pulling off crazy trade after crazy trade. But if you get Brandon Aiyuk for that, I think that's a good mix with George Pickens. That's an opposite mix. It's like, hey, this guy's going to be the sharp route runner who gets open in spaces and creates easier looks for your quarterbacks. And again, contrasting from the style that George Pickens plays. And then, the Steelers did add Van Jefferson, but let's be honest, Van Jefferson is more of like another Allen Robinson type of receiver. He's not going to move the needle a whole lot, but he can be consistent. He can be a veteran. He can come in and make the smart plays. That's what you want there. And I'm still not closing the door on the opportunity for a Tyler Boyd to come in. But I really think if you're looking at the Steelers wide receiver position right now, what is needed the most in this group? I think, one, you need 3 receivers you can count on, to be consistently there. And we've talked about how in Arthur Smith's offense, you might not always need the 3rd receiver, but to have it in development, I think would really work in their favor. Now, looking again at how to build this moving forward, you get a veteran wide receiver. Maybe then you draft a wide receiver, which is why in Mock Draft Monday we made one of the rules that you had to draft a wide receiver in one of the first 2 rounds along with a center, because we'll get into that later. But I do think that this is part of the Steelers' plan. Get a vet, get a rookie, work with George Pickens, see how Calvin Austin develops, have Van Jefferson for an emergency, and then just rock out from there. And then you still have Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, and an offensive line that you're developing. And now you have a veteran quarterback who can manage it in a system that should be a lot more organized than last year. So all that to be said, I think a big part of what you're looking at for what the Steelers right now is trying to find that next receiver that's out there. So I do think that there's opportunity for the Steelers to keep searching. There's still free agents out there, and there's options for for the Steelers to still consider things. Hunter Renfro's another slot guy that they could look at. Again, Tyler Boyd's out there. Got guys like that. And I think Devontae Parker's still available, but by and large, you're not going to. I don't think the Steelers are looking to make a big pay splash for a wide receiver at this point. If they trade for a Brandon Aiyuk, they are going to have to pay him, and that's going to be an interesting move there to see how much they would have to pay a Brandon Aiyuk to stick around. So, because remember, the whole point, I think a big part of why they can't keep Deontay Johnson is because they want to be able to pay George Pickens when his contract is up, and he's on his 3rd year now. So his rookie contract is up next year after next season. So I think what you're going to look at is the Steelers trying to make a decent wide receiver signing here, and then moving forward, trying to find that rookie wide receiver who can either be the really good complement that to George Pickens and kind of take over that second role, or becomes maybe the future star that makes it so that you don't have to pay George Pickens, and then maybe this guy becomes the next star that you pay. Either way, I think the Steelers do have a good plan in place, and we'll see how the visit with Mike Williams goes, and if there is a move to try to get a guy like Brandon Aiyuk away from the 49ers and bring them into the facility and add a route runner there. We'll do Mock Draft Monday to see if you won on Mock Draft Monday right after this on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the app that you can download right to your phone or go to the website, gametime.co, and you can buy tickets to all your favorite events without it being stressful. Game Time is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They give you killer deals on last-minute tickets, even in tickets that are up to an hour after your event has started, because you can go on the Game Time app right now, look it up on your phone, and when you're looking at tickets there, you're getting the best price every time, and they have a best price guarantee that can't be beat. But also, you're seeing the view from those tickets, from those seats that you're looking at, so that you know you're not getting scammed out of your money, so that you get the best of both worlds. They're the best price and insurance that you're not getting scammed there by getting this great price. Also, with these exclusive flash deals, you look at the best price guarantee from Game Time. They promise you that if you find tickets to the same event in the same section of row for less somewhere else, they'll credit you 110% of the difference. That's just how confident they're going to get you the best price. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase, or go to their website, gametime.co. Terms and conditions apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue the show today. We're going to step away from all the free agency talk and all the madness that has been. This is March, and all that. But let's talk about Mock Draft Monday, because we haven't done it since last Monday. And I have to admit, I set up this contest before we knew anything was going to happen. I put it out like Friday morning when I still had my innocence of thinking Kenny Pickett was going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler next year, when we thought it was just going to be him and Russell Wilson. We had no idea that Justin Fields would be here. So forgive me if this is a little different, but I still think it applies to what the Steelers situation is, because I said, hey, they need a wide receiver. Even if they sign a vet wide receiver, if they don't get like a Mike Evans or something like that, or a trade for Justin Jefferson or something crazy like that, they're going to need a rookie wide receiver who they can trust moving forward. And they're going to need a center, because they have not addressed that position in free agency, and they've run out of options realistically there. So those were our two rules, was you could do those. And I think I might have put I put a max trade clause on there, but either way, we get to our winner for Mock Draft Monday this week. Congratulations to Jacob Tempest, who submitted a very interesting mock draft that fit exactly the rules, and I thought brought in a lot of other needs. Now, some of the picks I think might be players who won't be available at the certain spots if they were there, but hey, you did what you were supposed to do. Let's go over these picks from Jacob Tempest, this week's Mock Draft Monday winner. So first of all, it's obvious that Jacob traded back because he has the 29th overall pick, which means he traded back. I actually don't know who's the 29th overall pick right off the top of my head, but he traded back 9 spots and then got Adonai Mitchell, who I love, out of Texas. Everyone's going to be talking about Xavier Worthy and all his super fast 40-yard dash time, but go watch some Adonai Mitchell tape. This guy gets separation. He has a great route tree. He knows how to he knows how to deal with different defenders, whether they're pressing or whether they're off. He has great hands. I think Adonai Mitchell could be the underrated early pick here at wide receiver that could end up being just as good as some of the guys at the top of the draft, just with his tape and what I've seen overall. And if the Steelers believe in that, and they did talk to him, we talked. I told you guys when I went to the combine, they talked to a lot of those type of top line wide receivers in this draft class. If they talk to him, it's definitely on their radar to try to make that happen. So I like the idea here, getting Adonai Mitchell, and then in the second round, going and getting Zach Frazier with that 51st overall pick. And I don't know if Zach's going to be there that long, but if he is, this is a great hit. And now you've got your presumed center for the future. You've got a top receiver to add to the room, and there's a lot of excitement going on there. But what I also loved about what Jacob here was what he did after these picks. It wasn't just settling at that and just be like, I'm just going to get a bunch of nobodies. He went and got positions of need with that pick that he got back in the late second round with that trade back in the first. He got the 61st overall pick. He used it on Braden Fisk. Braden Fisk, defensive tackle out of Florida State. If you were watching the combine, Braden Fisk was a combine hero this year. He blew it up. His metrics were 1 of 1. He was crushing it. His relative athletic score was through the roof. And if you watched him at Florida State, he was a bad man. Like, you go back to some of the wins that they had throughout the year, he was one of the most disruptive forces in the ACC that over this past season. So Braden Fisk, a heck of a pick, and I think that him next to Keanu Benton would be monsters going forward. But let's go over some more of your picks here. You had Kieran Amagadije, the offensive tackle out of Yale. Solid pick there. It's a guy that you're bringing in, in the third round there, and a guy that could come in, maybe try to learn, and eventually take over for Dan Moore Jr. Maybe not a right away situation. That's the one thing I think is that it's going to be tough, is that if the Steelers want to move on, and try and move on from Dan Moore and try to make things work there. They need to find someone who's experienced. But if you get a mid-level guy like Kieran Amakadije, I just don't see that happening right away. It's going to take time to do that. But we digress. We get back into the rest of the picks of Mock Draft Monday from Jacob Tempest. 98th overall pick, Junior Colson. Love it. Think that he'd be a great fourth addition to this linebacker room. And I think he would fit right in with what you're trying to do athletically, stuffing the run, all those things. Junior Colson. I think that's a pretty good pickup. And also we know, because we talked to the Steelers and everything, we talked to him. Steelers are very interested in this guy. So certainly someone to keep an eye on there. Kyrie Jackson, the cornerback out of Oregon, was his 119th overall pick in the 4th round. Really like Kyrie Jackson. I think that he's a really strong corner that didn't run a great 40-yard time, but he can be a guy that fits a lot of other metrics. So I think that he shouldn't be overlooked. I do think that he's going to maybe go higher than 119, but I don't think that he's I don't think that he's going to be a guy that goes past this at all if he does get there at all. And then for the final 2 picks, you had Joe Milton, the quarterback out of Tennessee, at 178, and Isaac Garendo, running back out of Louisville, at 195. So we're going to throw out the running back at Louisville. That's not the thing here. Joe Milton, though, I like the idea of getting that third string quarterback guy that just learns the offense behind these 2 guys. And then just that way, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But if it does work out, well, then you went and got a heck of an athlete to give you a chance. So I look at Joe Milton as a plus there. And I just look at this overall slate of players like Adonai Mitchell, Zach Frater, Braden Fisk. Those are 3 hits right away. And then you look at Junior Colson, Kyrie Jackson, Joe Milton. Like this is a decent swap here. Like there's a lot of great options. So I look at this situation and I think, man, like if the Steelers are able to put some things together in the draft and have that kind of draft that they wanted like last year, I think it could be the start of something really special with the core that they're trying to put together. So stay tuned here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Thanks again to Jacob Tempest for the Mock Draft Monday submissions. Thank you all for your Mock Draft Monday submissions. I appreciate everyone who does that. Sorry, we can only pick one winner each week. But I think it's a fun thing to do, and I'm very happy that you guys all get involved with it. We're going to be back tomorrow with more on your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here, on every day, Monday through Friday, talk about your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll see you tomorrow talking more on your Steelers.